So where might you see some of these cultural references in your everyday life? Well, we're going to take a look at some of them now. Now, putting a man on the moon was a massive accomplishment of human ingenuity that seemed utterly impossible to earlier generations. But since we did the impossible, shouldn't we be able to do other things? That's the basic idea behind the phrase, "they put a man on the moon, but." So the phrase is something that you would use when you're complaining that something that's easier than going to the moon hasn't been solved yet. So, for example, they can put a man on the moon, but they can't make it so I have cell phone service in the country. Or they put a man on the moon, but they can't get the subway to run on time. Now, sometimes this phrase is used with more serious situations like homelessness or global warming, but typically it's used as a joke. While the space program isn't as prominent as it once was, it's still doing really vital and amazing work. So while they're getting headlines about, ongoing missions with exploring Mars or investigating Jupiter and its moons, they unfortunately are also getting some negative headlines. A few months ago, they were supposed to have the first all-female spacewalk, and this was a really big deal. But then NASA suddenly canceled the mission. And it wasn't because there was some kind of, malfunction with the shuttle or, an issue with some kind of atmospheric condition. It was because they didn't have enough medium-sized spacesuits for the female astronauts.
Let's go now to outer space, NASA. In the past, they took a giant leap for mankind. But this week, when it comes to women, NASA, you done f***ed up.
Apparently, gender inequality knows no bounds, not even in space. NASA's first all-female spacewalk had to be canceled because there weren't enough spacesuits that fit. The crew only has one medium-sized spacesuit available at the International Space Station. This despite the fact that the women's 2013 astronaut class was 50% female.
Seriously? NASA had to cancel the first all-female spacewalk because they didn't pack enough spacesuits? How do you screw that up?
It was all over the internet and the news, with people calling out NASA for not fixing this problem beforehand. Hillary Clinton even tweeted about it. They can put a man on the moon, but they can't pack enough medium-sized spacesuits. So I want to circle back to the Planet of the Apes. So like I said before, this movie is a really famous sci-fi movie. In it, astronauts land on a planet where apes are the dominant species. They have, a full-blown language and society of their own, while humans are just dumb, mute animals.
Dr. Zayas, you mustn't. You promised.
What I do with no pleasure. Silence him.
Doctor?
Dr. Zayas, this is inexcusable. Why must knowledge stand still? What about the future?
It's been referenced in a lot of different TV shows and movies like Madagascar and Archer.
You maniac! You burned it up! Darn you! Darn you all to heck!
Can we go to the fun side now?
My little cherry blossom.
Would you please focus?
No! I'm here! No! No! You maniac! You blew her up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
Another line from the movie that gets referenced a lot in media is from the scene where the apes realize that Taylor, the main human protagonist, can actually speak.
Go get him!
Taylor! Why did you run away?
Security police.
I'm in charge of this man.
No longer, madam. He is now in the custody of the Ministry of Science.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
So this line will show up in internet memes, and it also shows up in popular shows like Family Guy.
You better put that thing on a leash, sir, or I'm gonna have to fine you.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty dog!
The original movie came out in 1968 and was super popular and even had a couple Oscar nominations. It then had 4 sequels. In 2001, there was a remake, and then in 2011, they rebooted the entire series with an additional 4 movies. The last movie came out in 2017, and there's supposed to be even more in the future. And they probably won't be any good. The other ones weren't any good, but the first movie is great, even if the ending does get spoiled in a ton of TV shows and movies. So in this episode, there are 2 astronauts who are training Homer. The first one is a made-up astronaut called Ray Bannon, and then the second one is a real-life astronaut, Buzz Aldrin. And they actually got second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin himself, to voice the character, which is really cool. As of this taping, Buzz Aldrin is still alive, and at 89 years old, he's still doing press conferences and talking on TV shows about space exploration and sending astronauts to Mars. He even has a Twitter feed if you're interested in following him and learning more about what he's doing. He's also famously the inspiration for Toy Story's Buzz Lightyear. Watch this scene of newscaster Kent Brockman.
It's difficult to tell from this vantage point whether they will consume the captive Earthmen or merely enslave them. One thing is for certain, there is no stopping them. The ants will soon be here. And I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords.
So this scene is honestly just a really funny scene, and probably the most famous scene from this episode. And the phrase, "I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords," is something that you'll still see pop up in memes, usually about companies or politicians. It's a way of jokingly saying that you or someone else is willingly giving in to an oppressive power. Ken Jennings even referenced this famous line in 2011 when he was beaten on Jeopardy by Watson, an AI created by IBM.
Over to Ken Jennings now, 18,200 going in. Bram Stoker is what we're looking for, and we find who is Stoker? I, for one, welcome our new computer overlord.
So one movie that gets referenced again and again in this episode is Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. If you haven't seen it, you really should. It's a sci-fi classic. Though, fair warning, the beginning is a little slow. So the movie itself is really kind of hard to explain. It's definitely one of those movies that are just very conceptual and something that you kind of have to just watch to understand it. So in one of the most iconic scenes from the movie, they have the blue Danube Waltz playing as we get these really inspiring, sweeping images of the space station and of Earth. And this beautiful music really allows you to take in the gravity and the beauty of the entire scene. In The Simpsons, this song plays over Homer eating chips. Watch the last scene of this episode. Now, that probably seems really weird and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it actually references 2 really iconic scenes from the movie. So the first part, where Bart throws the marker into the air, is a reference to the ancestor of man throwing a bone into the air that then morphs into a space station, which is supposed to symbolize the evolution of mankind. The baby Homer floating in space at the end is a reference to the star child that shows up at the end of the movie. I swear these scenes make sense in the context of the movie. It's a very artsy movie, but it's great, and you should definitely go watch it.